Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
From being the little girl who played HR, even firing her own mother, to the traveling HR entrepreneur and international speaker that she is now, Katherine McCord has had quite a journey. She has multiple physical and neurodiversities and says, "I'm successful with my diagnosis, not in spite of them." And boy, is she. Katherine is the founder and president of the people operations at the consulting firm Titan Management. She's an international speaker and the founder of the Neuroverse, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to neurodiversity. She's developed the first ever anti-bias application tracking system and created Make Accommodation Standards. It's a process, and it is the campaign that's making a difference. She loves to stay busy and further her three missions: integrity, inclusion, and innovation. With Katherine, it's all about expanding humanity. And I'm so excited to have her here today. Welcome to the conversation, and oops to my technology.
It's okay. No worries. I'm very happy to be here with you today, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
So I do the more formal introduction, and that's great. But would you please tell our audience the story, how you got to what you're doing, why it's important, and why it's important right now?
So I have been on the path to do what I'm doing since I was a child. Not only was I playing HR with my mother when I was a kid, which really all of that did happen. Yeah, I was playing interview and then I did fire her once too, about which she was very happy, by the way. Everybody's always very concerned about my mother. Was she okay with this? Yeah, she was thrilled to death because she was an HR person and she was thrilled about it. So I also, my cousins and I would design little companies and sell shares of them to our family members and friends. And so we were very entrepreneurial from a young age. And so all of this kind of carried out, and I've had neurodiversity basically since I was born is the easiest way to explain it. And I also have acquired neurodiversity, which means that it came later in my life and was caused by other things. And so it's been an interesting journey. And it's funny because a lot of people think that I got into the neuro side of work because of my own neurodiversity, and that's actually not correct. So I grew up with parents who just like magically, I guess, knew how to take care of a neurodivergent and or neurospicy kid, and they were incredible and just really set me up for success. And it was when I got older and figured out that not everybody had that I thought, oh no, we need to fix this. This is not okay. And then the more I dug in, the more problems I found. And I'm very much a solutions person. So I dove into that side of the work, and that combined with my years of HR recruiting and realizing how jacked up that whole system is and how much we need to fix the world of work all came together so that now I consult and I speak and I teach and now even write. I just wrote and published my first book on the topics of universal workplace design and neurodiversity.
So let's talk a little bit about the book and universal design. That is absolutely fabulous. I love, right, the inclusivity of the title, right? It's everything, right? I absolutely, I love that. So tell me a little bit about, the approach, what that actually means.
Sure, yeah. So universal design is actually an old architectural and then eventually an IT concept that means exactly what it sounds like. You design for everybody and with all scenarios in mind. It's a very kind of global way of thinking and designing. And it is very much an inclusive aspect as well. And a lot of people are very shy of the word inclusion. And I think it's because a lot of people are confused about what that actually means. Inclusion is literally for everyone. Every single human on the planet, inclusion applies to you. It does. And it's not about infliction, it's about inclusion and showing respect and freedom and honoring each other's autonomy. That's what it's about. And so in a workplace, that specifically refers to supporting people and working in ways that are natural and healthy to them, because that's when they're the most productive. That's when they're the happiest. That's how you get retention. That's how innovation grows up. goes up, not grows up, and goes up, and it's really a wonderful way to work. Hewlett Packard did a similar program to what I teach and recommend, and they took one team and kind of experimented with it, and found that the team's productivity went up 33% just by designing so that everyone can be comfortable and happy and healthy. And it sounds so overwhelming, right? Oh my God, we have to think about everybody and people panic. Well, I grew up in what I call a true Southern home. Like and these, let me tell you, Southern women, if you do not know, are obsessed with being the best hostesses and throw the world's best parties. There is nothing like it. Every single human is considered, every single human's favorite foods, favorite topics, favorite games, everything. Everything is addressed down to the tiniest little detail. I grew up with this, okay? My family throws elaborate, wonderful parties. So it was natural to me to think of other humans and what makes them comfortable because I was taught that growing up. And so for me, it took a while to understand that other humans, again, did not have that understanding because even though our conscious mind knows that we're not the center of our universe, our primitive brain still thinks we are. So I just assumed everybody else knew this stuff. So you, you start to design in the most simple, basic ways and just say, okay, how do we keep everything so that it's not pigeonholed, right? So that it's not limited to this. So you want to build in flexibility, but then also, so flexibility is a paramount element. But then outside of that, it's all about mission focus. Every policy, every department, every procedure, everything. It's about mission, not how we get there. So all these little details along the way, they can change, they can evolve, they can be flexible. That's cool. It's about the mission. So if you're hiring, butts and seats, as a friend of mine says, right? That's the mission. It's to get somebody in who can effectively fill the position. If it's producing widgets, the goal is to get those widgets out the door. Everything else can be flexible, right? So that's what it's all about. So being mission driven, flexibility, and being thoughtful, honestly. Being thoughtful of other humans. That's it.
And as we're talking through this, right, all of these ideas in conversation sound very simple, right? It's thinking about other people. It is considering their wants, their needs, and to make it all come together and work properly, it's about putting a mission at the center of it. None of this is what I like to call rocket surgery. It's not difficult, and yet we bungle it up left, right, and sideways all the time. As you're trying to solve for making everything more inclusive through the ideas of universal design, what are some of the things that the short-term horizon pain points that you're helping clients solve for?
So first of all, I don't do the let's
Okay.
baby step to things. I think that's ridiculous because it doesn't work. Like universal design either exists or it does not. Inclusion either exists or it does not. There is no in between. It's these are both global concepts. And why why drag your feet if you know something's better? So, but what I do is I go in and I help them understand why, how how it's going to function, the simplicity, how it's going to help them out, and in a very calm and practical type way. But the number one thing that I have found, because really and truly it is so very simple, and even with larger organizations, you can overhaul your system. I mean, I'm talking like enterprise type clients. You should be done with universal design in a month. And then just making sure that from there the programs keep going and processes and procedures keep going, right? So, and that's at an enterprise level. That's a mega company. So it does not take that long. It's not that hard. But the number one thing we have to overcome, and so this is always where I start, is the very first thing I teach is understanding and then conquering our inherent biological, every single human has it on earth, ego mechanism, and then learning to respond with curiosity. And what that means, it's not just about asking questions, but just general knowledge gathering, right? So our primitive brain functions very differently from our conscious brain. And our primitive brain often blocks us from being flexible, from being innovative, from making best decisions because it's afraid, right? Our primitive brain's trying to keep us alive. It still thinks that like pterodactyls are going to swoop down and eat us, right? Like it's that's the mindset of our primitive brain. And so it's functioning on a very different level. So the trick is to learn to recognize that ego mechanism, which again, every single human has. It's nothing to feel guilty about, and move that process into the conscious brain so that then you can function at a much higher level. It's if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy, it's an old psychological concept, right? And it's about going up that pyramid away from the physiological needs, the safety, and all that, up into belonging, self-esteem, and then ultimately uh, reaching your
Right,
peak
that
is what I call it,
self-actualization
the
place
level
where
of
we
Maslow's
are
hierarchy.
at our
Yeah, the
highest
stuff
being.
right at our peak, yes. And that's what it's all about is helping people get out of that phase. And really and truly, once you get people at a point of
Mhm.
curiosity, the program just starts going because then they get it and they're able to communicate more effectively. They're actually, your brain synapses change. Your brain starts to go, oh, yeah, no, we don't need to be afraid. We're going to do this other thing and we're going to get all the information and we're excited and we're happy. And you change your chemicals from stressful, unhealthy, bogged down chemicals of adrenaline and to way too much dopamine in some cases, and moving that to oxytocin and serotonin, which are happy and healthy chemicals. So you not only help your company, you help your own personal health and the health of those around you. So that's the first thing that we teach.
There's a lot in that first thing. So I'm really intrigued with the idea that ego is where you start. And as I was listening to this,
Yeah.
right, with the work I do in the change world, it's people are inherently resistant to change. Okay, so peel that back. What's behind that resistance? And it's ego, right? It's our own sense of not wanting to be perceived as inept, inadequate, stupid. How fill in blank here, and that ties to ego. And I had never quite pulled it back to that level. So that is a really fabulous big first shattering and way to debunk resistance to change, which this whole undertaking is a foundational
Right.
change to thinking, to behavior, to what will be corporate culture.
Yeah.
And then as you walk that all the way through, it's actually improving the overall well-being of the individual, right? When we get to oxytocin and
Yes.
serotonin, right,
It
and we're
is.
having our happy things in our brain, everything becomes so much more possible when we're living in that space of curiosity and feeding our bodies with positive physiological reinforcement and getting out
Yes.
of fight and flight or
Yes.
fight to reinforcing
Yes.
the good things.
Yeah. And mission alignment, by the way, also helps with the curiosity.
Mhm.
That's part of that class, like tying it back to the mission alignment thing. So I once was doing part of my speech, and I was teaching to a group of HR and leadership folks about the curiosity versus ego and how to work through that and actually physically how to do it and all this. And I told myself I'm going to use a very controversial example. Don't worry, we're not going to discuss it. I just want to use this to get you thinking, right? And I presented one side of the
Mhm.
supposed argument, and and one's like part of the room's like, yeah, 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 that's it. And then the other side, I presented that side, and they go, and the other part of the room goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I said, what I hear is that you all have the same mission. You're all concerned with children. And the room fell silent until one person goes, "Oh my God." Literally just like was like, "Oh my God, I am mind blown." I said, "You all want the same thing. You just have a different idea of how to get there." So now we're going to take work topics that are controversial and we're going to put people with differing opinions together and we're going to practice breaking our ego mechanism to respond to curiosity. And part of that is going to be finding that mission alignment because that's how you work through the hard stuff.
Yes, and
That's how you
so
do it.
and you were very clear and about this in your description earlier. Curiosity is not just asking the questions, right? It's that's the step in curiosity,
Right.
right? We have to be able to ask the questions, but
Yeah.
it's how we process and receive and close the communication loop for curiosity to actually have the impact to get to what you just described, that point of alignment. So in the work that you're doing, it's to mission alignment because that's what drives the business and how you're going to
Yeah.
measure and align.
Well, but even in personal communication, right? Like find the commonality, if you will. Like if that term's better suits, like find the commonality, find the way in which you can connect and a starting point from which you can then grow the
And
conversation,
these
right?
ideas are so impactful, certainly in business. Right, we're already starting to talk about in our personal life, and I'm going to make the big leap forward into to society, right, where we are today in the United States, and our ability to have conversations with people who have views that may be different from ours. It's sort of a lost art.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of talking and not listening. We aren't. There is a total lack of curiosity, because it's right or it's wrong. Right, everything is very polarized,
Mhm.
and this approach in this very simple, and I've got air quotes going with the word simple, because there's elegance in the simplicity, because it makes exponential change happen if we apply these principles of universal design. We get rid of our ego. We actually interact in two-way communication with other human beings and find that point of connection. We can change anything
Right.
with that mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how real work gets done. And the only point at which I will disagree with you is I don't think it's a lost art. I don't
Okay,
think it
that's
ever
fair.
was an art in humanity. Like that's the only thing I would say is that I don't think humanity's been good at communication up to this point. But I think with where we are now, we're not hunter gathering anymore. Like we're good, right? We're living a cushy life overall as a species. Um, so it's time to start doing better with some of these other things and evolving our species a little bit further along. And and very much to your point with even just these mega issues, and one of the things I teach in my extended class on this topic is how to challenge yourself and practice this. And one of the toughest ones I ever personally did, because I go in periodically, even though now I'm very practiced and I'm almost what I would call like, I don't believe in perfection, but I'm at what I
Sure.
would call an expert level of this practice, and using it is that I go and I find people that I just am diabolically, even ethically varied from them. In other words, there will never be an agreement here, but I still need to talk to you and figure something out, right? I'm basically pretending that you're the person that if I can get you to be in a middle ground, we can move the dial, right? And so I found a guy who was overtly saying he did not believe that women should work and that they should not have equality. And I said, okay. I said, I am very curious. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you think that? And he lists all these things. And what was interesting is reading it and looking at it from the standpoint of curiosity and trying to,
Yeah.
get in his mind and understand where this came from. His whole concern was about kids and the family unit. Now, I don't know if he's a child of divorce. I don't know if he's a co-parent in a divorce. I don't know what his situation is. But something happened in this dude's life. You could tell where like this was a major concern for him. And so I responded back and I said, you know what? I hear your concern. Kids matter and their upbringing matters. And and I talked about I think the empathy for the points that he brought up. And but then I listed, some of the things I said, in that same spirit, here's where I differ on my perspective. And I said, and here are some facts that were perhaps missing, from when you came up with this opinion. And I gave some data and all this, and it was fascinating because people who had been being
Yeah.
horrible to this man, right? Which I get. Okay, I want to give some grace to that. I get it, but because inner me was like, I really just want to kick him,
Yeah.
like I just do. But yeah, but taking that side, and people started like liking and hearting and commenting, and they loved the response
Yeah.
and engaged with it in a productive way. And they were like, okay, I see what he's saying, like blah blah. And then like people's minds changed and people started just engaging with it in a whole new way. And so it was really interesting to watch. And I don't think he ever commented, although he did like my comment, which I thought was interesting. I was like, okay, so at least there wasn't like anger and all of that back at it. But it was an interesting one. So even practicing those tough
Yeah.
global type topics, right? There are ways to use curiosity to bridge gaps and to figure out a way to move forward.
I have nothing but respect for the fact that you went out and sought out the difficult conversation, right? The one that would be challenging personally to engage in, knowing, right, that you were 180 degrees in opposition with their beliefs, to try and work through, to find a middle ground, to find a point of commonality, which you did. And, I would
Yes.
hypothesize, with absolutely no data to back me up except a really big base of opinion that I have in my heart and soul right now. More often than not, we should be able to find a point of commonality. I don't honestly believe that there are things that are so opposed that there isn't that shred of something that we could latch onto to go, oh. And I say that knowing I have some very strong beliefs of my own, right? That I would have to, find that, there are people who would go, you are absolutely wrong, Lisa. You are crazy. But I don't think that I am. I think that underlying it, you were talking through, you don't know his story, but the concern that he has stems from care for children. Who is honestly going to take the position that says caring for children is not necessary, it's not good, it's not, it's not needed, right? How do you get to that, right? It's just,
Right.
okay, I am even not a parent, and I'm not a parent because I didn't think I could care for children,
Same.
so I understand it could find that commonality. So this
Right.
is an incredibly disruptive mindset, in that, right, we are challenging that everybody can, with care and thought and effort, through curiosity, ditching our ego, get to a place where we can communicate and find commonality. So, from a business perspective, we're aligning on mission. From a human perspective, we're aligning on just being good stewards of humanity. And right in our personal lives, we're being good members of our community. This is beautiful. And it is an absolutely fabulous
Thank you.
cause, and lots of different ways that I know that you're taking this out into the world, through business, through your not for profit. I'm
Mhm.
sure it's baked into that experience as well. Absolutely.
Oh
So, if
yeah.
you have piqued the curiosity of members of the audience, how might they find more about you and everything you're doing?
I'm I'm quite a few places. One of the big ones is LinkedIn. It's very easy to find me. I am all over the place there. Feel free to reach out directly, even if it's on a personal topic, not a professional one. I'm always happy to connect and answer questions. I have a speaker site, katherine.mccord.speaking.com. I have my professional website for Titan Management, my company, which is titanmanagementusa.com. And then if you want to learn a little bit more about this topic of curiosity and about universal workplace design, you can check out my book, The Obvious Solution You Never Heard of, Universal Workplace Design. It is on
All
Amazon.
right, Catherine, thank you so much for being here. Audience members, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.